You think you can hear us through these things? Yours is riding a little low, dude. I see a little seepage right there. Yeah, you got to pull it up.
Seal.
I'm
How's everybody doing out there in podcast land?
I'm fortunate enough to have the beak to hold this thing up. You, on the other hand, you got to work on that.
Flat noser. How's everybody doing out there? Are we audible?
I think we're audible.
Happy Thursday. You know what Thursday is? It's TMBA podcast day.
That's right.
Let's see.
Yeah, it works. So cool.
Let's see. We are going to get started here in just a moment. It's a live stream. I got to take this thing off.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm keeping mine on. See how long I can go.
How's everybody doing out there? Happy Thursday. It's TMBA podcast today. Today, with the help of you guys, we've put up an extended, addended, commended version of our Entrepreneur Mobile episode.
David asked, did we sew these ourselves? My mom made these. Thanks, Mom.
Ian's mom, so
and,
awesome.
If you notice right here, it has the Dynamite Circle logo on it. So cool.
It's funny if you go around the house, all the things that our respective families have put the DC logo on, like car, toolbox, porta potty.
That's true. My kid does have a Dynamite Circle sticker on his little porta potty.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's how he identifies it at school. The one with the dynamite on it.
All right, everybody, welcome to the live stream. Today's topic, we are going to ask for some of your help, and we're genuinely interested in this, so much so that we had another topic planned, and Ian and I sat in this very Podshop last night for a few hours talking about various ways that people can on-ramp their way into the entrepreneurial life. Of course, when you look at entrepreneurship, the benefits seem pretty obvious. The chance to own your own time, to be where you want, and to expose yourself to essentially unlimited upside in terms of income potential for the amount of effort that you put in. Also, just the freedom, baby. We're talking about freedom. We're talking about a lot of people are experiencing right now what it feels like to spend Wednesday in your pajamas. Punchline, it feels pretty good.
It feels pretty good.
Join us tomorrow. Our good buddy Jeff Picaro and Content Pro is swinging by the live stream to discuss the top 10 entrepreneurial movies of all time.
This is going to be a serious show.
Serious shit. And I think you are going to be surprised by what we come up with. Of course, there's already been some early chatter that I will try to inject as many romantic comedies onto the list as possible, which I will.
Most people, I don't know, I'll watch me a rom-com here and there, especially on the plane if I want to get a little weepy, on the way to Asia or something like that.
That's right.
Bust into Dan's room on a Wednesday night, he's watching a rom-com.
I've watched them all. I've ranked them all. And I will be your source, your trusted source for rom-com intelligence. Of course, the greatest movie genre of all time. There are certain things. This movie idea is a relatively new idea. It's not like humans have always had movies.
Right.
So you launch this movie idea, and then you test out. Let's do the war flick. Let's do, the journey, the road trip flick. Let's do the art flick, all this stuff. But when they came in the 80s to the rom-com, I think they have achieved the height of what the movie format can do. And you're seeing now the movie format going down, the doco format come up, the long-form TV series. That's because we peaked with rom-com, people. We peaked
Interesting
with
theory.
rom-com. That's because you can bow tie the thing in an hour and a half. If you have a really interesting story, after an hour and a half, you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to need episode 2.
Jeff says Hitch or GTFO.
That movie sucks. I can't wait for tomorrow. It's going to be so much fun. Join us for that happy hour pod. Okay, so today, here's the idea. We genuinely want to figure out present 5 reliable ways to start a new business in 2020. And we're going to challenge you guys in the comments to maybe, if you have a theory about how others can get to where you're at, or if you have a theory about how you got to where you're at, we're genuinely interested in this stuff. And what we want to do is compile a list that can inspire people who are looking to join our ranks to do so. Whether it's a little mindset trick, whether it's a framework, whether it's a strategy that you did in SEO or product development or whatever that is, we're going to list some of our all-time favorites today. with the hopes that in the comment section today, we'll be able to pick up a few more. And then we'll share them on the TMBA blog.
Cool.
With attribution for the first 2 times, and then they'll become our ideas. That's how we do it here. How's everybody doing? We ready to do this thing?
Need a little coffee and then I'm ready.
That's delicious. So without further ado, 5 reliable ways to start a business in 2020. Number 1, rip, pivot, jam.
Oldie but a goodie.
An oldie but a goodie. Rip, pivot, jam has the notable attribute that you can prevent yourself from becoming a good idea Glenn.
Mm-hmm.
Good idea Glenn is the entrepreneur, the wantrepreneur who gets locked into the woodshed for 6 months, maybe 6 years, dreaming of this big idea, convincing him or herself that they're on to the next big thing. And really, ultimately, and I've seen this honest stress in people, that when they know they want to get into the business game or they know that they want to realize their idea, what they do is they put too much stress on themselves. They try to be too smart. Now, those of you in the comments might have noticed that Ian and I, mediocre minds. Hate to break it to you, man. I don't mean to judge. I'll speak for myself.
Thank you.
Not exactly the smartest guy around. And this can, in fact, be frustrating for smart people who run into us and say, how do those idiots have businesses and I don't? Yep. I'm good idea Glenn. I should have a business.
All I do is just run through brick walls. That's what I do. Like the Kool-Aid man.
And that's the jam. The jam part is, I am going to hustle my idea into the real world. I'm going to be the Kool-Aid man and break through the brick wall and see what happens in the real world, not in the cerebral world. The cerebral world is the one that we are taught to cultivate in school. We are taught that if I get an A on the test, then I'm smart. That if I get an A on the test, I understand truth. And then if I get an A on the test, that I will be rewarded in the real world. Now that's true. Strangely enough, the people that got the A's on the test are a lot of the people that run these high-level systems in our lives that sometimes you just say, I wonder why that totally effed up. Well, maybe it's because it's all manned by people who simply were able to get A's on tests the whole time. No hate for that.
Entrepreneurs copying each other's homework in the bathroom. Most likely. That's what I've seen.
Exactly. And so let's talk about then, sorry, your Adobe Flash player is like desperately wanting to update. Let's talk about then the individual elements here. Rip, pivot, jam. So rip is simply this. It does come from rip off, but that's not what we're trying to suggest. What we're trying to suggest is rather than having a good idea, find an established idea. This is something that already exists in the world. You don't have to be so smart. You can see, look, wow, that's reality. People value this thing. I might not fully understand it, but I understand one thing, which is a failure that reality has.
Yeah. And you don't rip the whole thing necessarily. You could, but you could just rip a part of it. Like you could rip the product. You could say like, well, this product exists. I know there's a market for it. I'm just going to rip that part of it. And you're not directly ripping anybody off necessarily.
You shouldn't. And there's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't rip people off. The first and foremost is that makes you very uncool and immoral, which I think is important because you got to live with yourself at the end of the day. And you should. One of the cool things about entrepreneurship is that you get to do things you can be proud of, and you get to do things that are cool in the world, and keep it cool and keep it fun. It's no fun being a ripoff artist.
That's one thing, and I don't have a problem maybe as much as you do about that, but so that's a moral conversation. The real reason though is because.
By the way, can I just interrupt you to say, if you really want to get Ian's juices flowing, ask him the following question: how would you make money if you could do illegal things for profit? He's like, how much time you got?
If you don't want, that's up to you, that part. But the real reason I don't think you want to rip people and products off most of the time is because there's a lot of intelligence baked into those products that you don't understand.
Exactly.
And so a lot of people, they'll rip a product off and they'll do the exact same thing that their competitor did. And then they'll realize like, oh, I shouldn't have done that because I didn't realize the reasons why those features were in there. And actually, I don't have the audience for those features, or it doesn't make sense with my audience.
Yeah, again, all these techniques work better if you think you're a dummy and you leverage forces outside of you. The problem with good idea Glenn is he's too smart. And what you want to do is tap in. One of the best ways to find a pivot, for example. So this, I think the rip and then the pivot part becomes obvious, which is let's take something that works in this industry or in this country and reapply it to a market that I understand really well.
Yep.
So, rather than looking at your competition, it can make sense to look at ascendant brands in other countries and other markets and say, wow, what they're doing is amazing. What if we did that in our niche? And then you tinker around with those pivots.
You look at the stuff in terms of physical products and like material sciences. You see this happen a lot. Like materials from other products like make their way into new products or different products, and it's because people realize things like Gorilla Glass is an example of that, making it into the iPhone. That's innovation.
Mm-hmm.
That's the pivot.
Again, so you don't have to be like an innovator or an inventor. You just have to be observant of things that are working in tangential industries. A related idea to the rip pivot jam concept is the one channel surfer. And this realization that if you're just getting started, the only thing you really need to notice to start a profitable business is one acquisition channel for profitable clients. And one of the ways we did this early in our careers was we found an SEO niche that the products being sold in that niche were like $600, and the competition for ranking highly and covering that first page of Google was relatively low for the amount of profit to be made. So all we needed was like that one acquisition channel. And so, in other words, you could be product agnostic here or information agnostic, except for one acquisition channel. And typically, Rob Walling would call this a one-channel business. There's some mechanics at play here where finding that is so valuable and relatively difficult that scaling into a two-channel business can often be impossible based on the economics. And so if you can find like whether it's Google product feeds, whether it's an SEO thing, whether it's an Instagram following, whatever that one channel is that leads to profitable customers, that's another way you can implement this rip pivot jam idea.
I feel like that was a lot easier back in 2000, whatever, 8, 9, 10. It's a lot harder now. I mean, you saw this like explode with Amazon sellers.
With SEO and Amazon, but there's always something new.
Totally. But the arbitrage play is what I'm talking about. Like what we did. So you see a channel in terms of SEO, and you think like, oh, okay, like this can be defeated. That seems infinitely harder than it used to.
Fair enough. Okay, number 2. So we talked about number 1, rip pivot jam. Number 2 is called the takeover technique. Again, we're talking about reliable ways to start an internet business. The takeover technique simply suggests, isn't it easier to be the super ninja level employee in a small internet business than it is to found one yourself? Again, leveraging OPP, other people's platforms, OPM, other people's money, OPB, other people's businesses. Get yourself a job at a small internet company and ask yourself, can I be the ascendant employee with a vision? Can I effectively run this business better than the founders? Can I take full responsibility over the course of years and actually run this damn thing? I guarantee you, if you can effectively take over a small business from the founder, that founder essentially trusts your vision for the business more than they trust theirs, and that balance of power gets tipped, that will lead to a career of entrepreneurship eventually. Now, it might not lead to you taking over that business or getting an equity stake, but it will parlay. Because once you have that confidence of being able to dance on someone else's dance floor, be able to employ their funds, you're going to be able to cut a deal with them or one of your key contacts from that thing. I mean, everybody's going to see you busting dance moves on that dance floor. That's the kind of thing that then the problem, again, this is leveraging outside forces. A lot of people will be in this situation and they'll end up blaming that company, the vision of the founder, and they'll say, well, I'm going to bail and do my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
That can be often very likely the case that like you were, your progress was held back in that situation. Those things all can happen. But also you got to be careful that it wasn't your incompetence that was actually happening. And I've seen it happen where people then they decide, well, they're going to go do their own thing, and they can never quite get even close to what that company was at because there was a clear skill set problem that they had. And it's worth addressing that skill set problem while you're employed rather than figuring it out the hard way when you're like, oh, I'm having trouble dropping cash to the bottom line. I'm having trouble scaling my business. And for a lot of like more experienced entrepreneurs who are able to walk into an organization and implement the takeover technique, they could probably, if you're asking people to be honest with you, just say, yeah, the problem is your skill set. Like you're just not that skilled. And the reality is entrepreneurship isn't that hard, but it is a skill set. You have to learn how to be an entrepreneur. And, the best way to do that is on other people's platforms. So that's the takeover technique.
Can we talk about skill set for a minute? I feel passionate about this idea of skills.
We're talking about skills.
We're talking about skills, and we're talking about practice.
We're not talking about ownership. We're talking about skills.
I do think that entrepreneurship is a skill set in its own right, and it's something that takes a lifetime. I don't think anybody like masters entrepreneurship, which is kind of an interesting thing in terms of the skill set. Maybe that's the truth with every skill. I don't know. But the idea basically that that you should have a skill or you should have some kind of thing that you're really good at to start a business, I think that makes life a lot easier. Maybe that's just my like survivor bias, but I think a lot of people that try and start their own business, they might have like ideas, they might have certain skills, but they're not really good at anything. And so you have to be really good at something, I think, to be able to start a business, or at least you have to be decent at it enough to start the business and then get really good at it.
So yeah, it's one of these things where your skill set, if it's really good at a very specific thing, it can also be your downfall. So you have to be able to combine your specific skill set with the knowledge and the know-how of entrepreneurship. I was talking with someone who's a services business coach the other day. It was Tommy Joyner. And we talked about this idea of like, man, if you're like an amazing copywriter, that can be a big problem for you because now all of a sudden you're getting paid because you are an amazing copywriter all the time. Instead of being an entrepreneur, what is that? That's someone who understands systems of value. And yeah, systems of value, a little bit less clear than copywriting, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot easier to glom onto the copywriting part. Part of the reason I'll speak for me specifically, a little bit different from you, is I don't have any skills. I don't have any marketable skills whatsoever. And so
that's not true.
I was never able to do the work that I was delivering. I always had to hire other people. And so my skill set was identifying the margin on the people who were delivering the work. That's entrepreneurship. I lucked into it,
Well, that was part of it for you. And I think the other part of it, if I'm talking about your skills, is that you're a very good communicator and you're very good at managing expectations and writing email. You're very good at writing email, believe it or not. But that did actually translate into a skill.
Pro email writer. Please hire me.
These were the early days. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I think if you're starting today though, like, and I was going to become an entrepreneur, I would not do it so dissimilar to the way I did it in the past, which is I learned how to design products, basically. That was my skill. And so if you're starting off today at square zero, like you haven't gone to school, you haven't done anything, just learn a skill and be really good at it.
Yeah.
Like detail cars really well. Become the best detailer in your whole neighborhood, you know? And then there's this guy that I follow on YouTube. He started this company called Ammo, and really good detailer. And now he makes his own detailing products, I mean, it just scales up from there.
And even like being highly skilled can scale tangentially. Like just because you're a great detailer doesn't mean you have to do detail or start a detail oriented company.
No.
Like being highly skilled often, and you combine being highly skilled with anything into that skill of entrepreneurship, even if it's a musical instrument. So many people in the Dynamite Circle were former competitive athletes or former highly skilled musicians. And it's this idea of like, don't overcomplicate it. Like you have to learn something that's profitable. What's profitable is being highly skilled.
And a high performer.
Yeah, exactly. And learning how to be that high performer. Like we have a mutual friend who was a very high level power lifter. And he recently took up cycling, as people, when they get old, they do. And our first comment about this guy was like, he's going to be a great cyclist. It doesn't matter what his, how fast he processes hemoglobin or he's like, doesn't look like a cyclist because he's a power lifter. We were just like, that guy understands how to train.
Yeah, he's an athlete.
Yeah.
And he will excel at any sport.
Okay, so number 1, rip, pivot, jam. Number 2, the takeover technique. Number 3, understanding the dynamics of 1,000 true fans. Okay, So essentially, this is a napkin math exercise that can help you to visualize how you might own a profitable asset one day. 1,000 true fans means that you can build a business that 1,000 people who appreciate your work will fund it to the tune of $100 a year. That's $100,000 in profit. So what you can do is start to brainstorm, well, what sort of thing, what sort of piece of art, what sort of product would I need to develop that, say, you put it in front of 15,000 people over the course of a couple years, and 1,000 of them step up and say, "Ooh, $100, no brainer. Like, that's worth 400. I'll pay 100." Now, admitted that can take years to get to the point where you put something in front of 15,000 people. So there's a lot of other variants of this. One is one true employer. So we already talked about that. One company that can allow you to sit at the table, can pay you what is a good wage to fund your education. That's one true employer. How about 10 true clients? These would be 10 companies willing to pay you a couple $1,000s a month for, say, your funnel building service or your Facebook ad service. We also, and then the next level would be 100 true customers. These are, say, 100 people willing to pay you $1,000 a year. And we skip the 1,000 true fans to 10,000 true visitors. What kind of, this might be like Dynamite Jobs would be an example of, we're really looking for hundreds of thousands of people to come to Dynamite Jobs. And we were talking about, like, what's a true visitor? Well, maybe in our case, it would be, imagine if there was 10,000 companies that built profiles at Dynamite Jobs, and these were companies that hired people. Man, that's a true visitor. We could find ways to get not maybe $100 a year from 10,000 true visitors. Now, one thing I want to point out when you're thinking about this napkin math, there's one new concept I want to toss in here, because the trouble area, as with many things in life, is in the middle.
Yeah.
Because 1,000 true fans, amazing. 10,000 true visitors, amazing. One true employer, amazing. Because you that's good. You're gearing strong, you're making money, you're learning, you can parlay. The trouble area is 10 true clients. And so I was like, how do we get out of the trouble of 10 true clients?
What's the problem with it, first of all?
The problem is you're spending a great deal of time on both acquisition and delivery for things that don't parlay well into the 100 and 1,000 version of what you're doing. And it's like, it's a very long rest stop. You'd want to go around that level straight to 100 or 1,000 if you can, because those are more leveraged value deliveries. It's more entrepreneurial. Whereas with 10 true clients, typically your life looks like having a job, but for 10 people instead of one. So my thought is, well, why don't you go back to one? How could we do that? You could have one key client. And so one of the things I think is a really good opportunity for people transitioning entrepreneurial space is to say, okay, I'll just say specifically how I did it. I developed in 2009 an SEO strategy, which I thought was comprehensive and would definitely work for a product business, aka our business. But I needed to fund my strategy. So I went and sold the strategy to one key client. I said, look, I'm going to do this for my business. I'm going to take on one client, and it's going to cost you $100,000 a year. And half of that is going to pay for my living, and half of it is going to pay for the execution of the strategy. Now, I could have gone out and tried to sell it to 10 people, but I was on a mission for us to get 100 customers. And so I was cognizant of this idea of not getting back into the services game. Once you get to 1,000 true fans, you're in the product game. Yep. And I think you can use one key client as a way of hopscotching, of leapfrogging this middle zone where the problem with clients is obvious. We've talked about it a lot. And I understand the reason you can get stuck in 10 true clients is like, it's a fast track to making 6 figures a year.
Yeah.
And the problem is it's tough to get out of that 6-figure gear once you get there. Whereas I'd rather be a little bit broker, a little bit longer, and build that asset that I can make 6 figures a year from an asset, not from managing a stable of clients.
I think you're right about this idea of like going back to 1 versus 10. I do think though, like if you have 10, you got to be able to get to 100 and then 1,000 and then 10,000 somehow.
If
But
you got 10 in the way, you can get to 100, then you're on the money.
yeah,
But if what you're thinking is like, okay, I've got a project management pod doing 10, and now I got to get my second pod. In other words, like you're not seeing scale value. You're just scaling laterally, 1-to-1 scale. It's like you're in for a headache, because I'll tell you the punchline of that. Someday you're going to wake up and you're going to have a $2 million business that has 60 clients, and it's probably going to be a big pita.
Yep.
Which isn't a Greek food, is a pain in the ass.
I agree with you.
All right. That's number 3, guys. Let's move on to number 4. Again, we'd love to hear yours in the comments, and we'll discuss them. We'll touch on everything dropped in there at the conclusion of these 5 points.
Eric says, Ollie in the middle zone. Ollie over that middle zone.
That's right.
That's right.
Do a kick flick right over that.
I actually thought he was saying like middle zone, so it needs to be like Mary in the middle, something like that. We need to develop this persona for the person that gets stuck in the middle.
All right. Number 4 is cover a profitable. Oh no.
We got some kind of delivery outside.
We got like
that's the weirdest backup I've ever heard.
We got like a serpentine belt that needs to be replaced out in the driveway there or something. Number 4 is cover a profitable beat. This is, I think, an enormous opportunity for people who love content on the web, which obviously is us right now and you guys in the comments. Like, content on the web is a way for us to tap into the truth of the matter, the way for us to see valuable information, to be entertained, to go past the traditional, gatekeepers or infrastructure of like this, mass media people, journalism majors writing about things they don't really understand. You could be that person that truly digs into something and basically dig into something that can truly help others make their lives more profitable. And if you can do this specifically as an entrepreneur, help people make money specifically, and not do it through general business tips, that's harder. Not do it through watch me travel, not do it through watch me live in my van, but instead do all those things while in the service of a specific beat. So I always said, I always scratch my head at travel bloggers and say, guys, you want to write, you want to travel, you enjoy serving your readers. Why is it like, watch me go to this next island? Why isn't watch me go to this next island and open a bank account there?
Yeah.
It's the same thing, but you're repositioning your energy to serve something valuable. It's going to be interesting to watch. My buddy James Clark at livinginasia.co recently launched a paid newsletter. So he's a travel blogger, but he started covering this beat of infrastructure in Southeast Asia. And this, at first, it was like, wow, James made a really interesting post about like how the train lines are going to be developed in Southeast Asia over the next decade and what the proposed plans are. And man, it must have taken him hours and tons of expertise to understand like how governments release this information and how it gets implemented in the real world. And I read his articles for a while, and then I started to think, wow, like this is really powerful information. Like if you had this information, you would know where to invest money in condos, in commercial real estate.
Yeah.
And so now all of a sudden you can reposition what was once a curiosity, a blog post with an ad next to it, as like, you could imagine having 100 true fans of an infrastructure newsletter that tip them off to where to put real estate investments.
I'll tell you what, Dan, I don't think there's any better time than this. Like, I think traditional mainstream media is completely broken. If you want to know about trends, you can't even read Harvard Business Journal. These guys are so out of touch with what's actually going on. Okay, Brent Beshore over at Permanent Equity. I'd like to have him on the podcast again sometime soon. He put out a survey, 336 anonymous responses collected in the last couple days. And go ahead and check that out. I'd highly recommend it. It's basically, he tapped in and he asked all these businesses, some of them anywhere from $3 million to $100 million, what's going on in their business? How is COVID affecting their business? Have they laid people off? Are they doing remote? Et cetera, et cetera. Nobody is publishing information like this. It's absolutely crazy crazy town. You
Yeah.
cannot go to any mainstream media and fully understand what is happening in the small business world. Brent put out a survey and he's starting to try and put those pieces together because it's important information. It's going to give us ideas about who's going to fold, who's going to need to hire, who's going to need this or that. So I think if you can cover a beat these days, man, it's just like it's going to be so valuable in the future because we've lost trust in mainstream media and there's so much opportunity to be actually on the ground covering important things that matter, like James Clark.
And typically, like the smaller the audience you have, the more specific and money that beat should be. So, a lot of people say, oh, I want to be like a make money online blogger. So I'll take a look at what Pat Flynn's doing and I'll replicate what he did. I think this is a bad strategy because Pat Flynn's acquisition costs are actually extremely high. If you were to look at the mechanics of it, his model demands that he has a big, enormous audience and he makes a little bit of money off. He's doing the 10,000 true visitors model. So if you're going to start covering a beat, think about more like, man, if I had like 50 or 100 readers, like what would they need to look like? What would their behavior need to be in order for me to profit off of them? You can look at a brand like Hodinkee does this in the luxury watch space. Like, man, if I could create a journalistic newsletter that enabled just 100 watch flippers or authorized dealers around the world to make more money on each and every trade, they would pay me a lot of money. Could you imagine if you run an authorized dealership and you got a couple $1 million worth of luxury goods in the back barn? Would you not pay $500 a year to have access to information that can help you make more profit off of it? And again, what I love about this is so many people nowadays, they're tempted to do Instagram where it's like, look at me in this outfit, look at me do this. They're tempted to write blog posts like, here's what I learned today. That's freaking amateur hour. And it's cool. If you're a successful entrepreneur, you're allowed to do whatever you want on your Instagram. But if you're looking at starting a business in 2020, serve your market. Do the Instagram crap later. All right, cover a profitable beat.
I put that survey, by the way, in the comments if you guys want to look at it.
Cool. All right, so to review, we got one more to go. Rip, pivot, jam, the takeover technique, 1,000 true fans, cover a profitable beat, and number 5, become a deal master. A deal master. Now, there's entrepreneurial ways to start a business, and then there's businessy ways or trader-y ways to start a business, arbitrage ways. And the reason I put become a deal master at the end is because I think that this is the easiest way to get started. It's like a gateway drug. It's not properly entrepreneurship but it can lead very quickly.
A lot of times it doesn't scale.
Yes, there's problems with all this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's a gateway drug. And it's one of these, this idea from Nat Eliason that I'm going to start stealing and stop saying his name because now it's my idea.
Yeah, you've already done it twice. That's the rule.
Right, I've done it twice.
Attribute
Shout
to
out
him twice.
Nat. He said, and he got it from a piece of advice from somebody. It's like, I just didn't know what to make, so I decided in the meantime I'd make money. That's basically the idea. And if you want to just make money in the meantime, become a deal master, trade anything, understand the particularities of a specific car model, a specific watch model, a specific Beanie Baby, whatever it is, like get to the core of not only the information you find online. The real deal masters take it to, you got to know the top 10 people that are doing it. You got to find a way to get them on the phone, to meet them in person, 6 feet away, of course, with the Dynamite Circle mask on.
That's right.
That's like actually a key thing, is really understanding the people and finding ways to care about their journey in a way that they can mentor you. And this will lead to entrepreneurship if you want it to eventually. Just understanding the particularities of a single market. And that is a very empowering feeling when you can look at an asset and say, I get it. And this is so different than, I talked to a few friends the other day who were telling me about their stock trades, and it was obvious that they just didn't quite understand it, but they want to make money, right? And cool. I don't disrespect that, but it's not the same thing as looking at a Datsun 510 and saying, I get it. I understand the problems. I understand that I could add a $500 part and that makes it worth $5,000 more. And here's exactly why. That's a kind of a knowledge base that you have access to immediately. Just choose something you like and become a trader for it.
Dan, as you know, on occasion, I cheat on our partnership and I buy and sell a Miata outside of our relationship. I know that
Yep.
you know that's going on.
I know
I mean,
it's
now
going.
you're here in the
So
pod
far,
shop,
I've accepted it.
and it's not a big distraction to my life or anything like that, or to the
I
business.
guess it's like I appreciate the life you provide me, and I know that you have other interests.
Anyways, I just want to highlight that because there is not a Miata that goes for sale in Austin, Texas that I don't know about. In fact, a lot of Miatas, they don't even go for sale. They just call me directly.
Yeah.
And then I say I want it or I don't want it, and then it ends up on the open market. Okay, so there's me who puts Miatas for sale on Craigslist, and then there's this other guy that I noticed. There's all these Miatas, these really nice Miatas going for sale on Craigslist. I'm like, what's going on with that? So I called the guy because I'm the Miata guy. It seems like he's the Miata guy too. Anyways, the Miata guy came over to my house a couple weeks ago, and now we're friends.
He's a cool guy.
He's
It
a
was a really
cool
nice
guy.
meeting.
I gave him a free part that he needed. So anyways, this is just about like knowing the market. This is understanding the market, being friends with who the players are. I wanted to know that guy because he's up to the same thing that I'm up to. And it's like, hey, what are you up to? And it's like, hey, what are you up to? Turns out we have tons in common and we can exist together. So I think if if you're going to be a deal master, like you said, you really do have to know who your competition is. Try and make friends with them. Everybody's in it for the same thing, and I think that you can help each other out.
And it's like I heard this one said about global politics. It's like for the people in power, that these country lines are all just a game. And it's like the Russians and the Americans, they're on the phone every day. And we do the same thing. And I'll tell you what, for those of you on the outside looking in at this whole thing, those conversations are so much fun. And you can understand why once you get into the entrepreneurial game, it's exciting. You have connections. It's not a bunch of people sitting around reacting to what happened on CNN.com. It's not a bunch of people's frankly bullshit opinions. Cool, it's fun to trade ideas around, but there's something magical about being on the red phone with someone who really knows something specific that they're talking about and trading information. And I just absolutely value those conversations. I mean, those conversations. That's why we run the Dynamite Circle, in fact, because those are the sorts of conversations that we try to cultivate at our events, is sitting there on the red phone, so to speak, with people doing similar things. And it's just awesome to talk to people that have skin in the game. That's what entrepreneurship's all about. Those are our 5 points.
How did you guys get started? I want to hear in the comments, and I will read all of them.
Yeah, what did you guys what was the method or inciting incident into you getting into entrepreneurship?
Doug Cunnington says, I did the 10 true customers, then grew slowly. So slowly. I like that.
Doug. Hey, I'm on the Doug show today. Doug Cunnington runs an excellent podcast and YouTube channel. And I'm looking forward to giving that episode a listen. I hope I didn't besmirch your brand too much, Doug.
Doug says the suggested way, my way, podcast or YouTube teaching and interviewing, which leads to email list, which leads to course or product service.
Yeah. This is a rock solid 100 true customers on the path to 1,000 true fans approach. And actually, on this list, that would be like the cover the beat approach, which is like, look, there are a lot of people who want to make money doing affiliate marketing. How about you fire up a podcast channel and you freaking show your screen going into the back end of your account, and you facilitate people that are moonlighting trying to make money on the internet with very specific information, man. Who's not going to pay for that?
Jeff says, I failed at a lot of stuff. Yeah, man. This is that's part of the process. Like, who just lucks into this stuff? Like, not very many people. I think you do have to fail at most things.
Totally.
But fall forward.
Totally.
Do it in a way that you pick up a skill set on the way.
Don't bet it all on black.
Yeah, you got 5 skill sets on your back by the time you're there, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, now I can do this other thing that I couldn't do before.
I've just started talking to some people with like jobs and stuff, and a lot of people rightly see this as the opportunity of a lifetime to make money in the stock market, and so they feel pressure to put money into it. And I was hearing about a few trades over the past week. We all have friends who are dumping money in, and it's like, what if this thing doesn't go your way? The great thing about what Doug's strategy just said, okay, you just fire up a YouTube channel and you help people do something that one day you're going to sell a course about. What happens if that doesn't go your way? You learn a shit ton of stuff. You probably had fun and made some reasonable connections during the way. And worst case scenarios, you understand how YouTube works. Oh, look at the person who's dumping money in the market. What happens if you're wrong about the thing you don't know about in the first place? You are effed. This is why I'm such a big fan of entrepreneurship.
Casey Von Neumann says 10 true customers, then rip pivot jam for the next one. Awesome. Let's see here. Oh, Steve A, I was just about to read your message and then you deleted it. Okay. Jim says, it's in my blood. Grandparents on both sides, both parents, uncles, sisters, all entrepreneurs. I started off picking blueberries and selling them to neighbors at age 7. The trading approach.
That's very interesting.
I think a
this
lot of
idea
us
of
started that
in the blood
way.
idea.
Yeah.
Like I didn't identify with entrepreneurship, because I didn't know about it, and I didn't think when I started meeting entrepreneurs that I really was one. It took me a while to like turn around and like look at myself and say, wait a second, like just because you never like used eBay in the early days and weren't good at like money stuff, like buying one thing for $5 and selling it for 10, that doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of other skills, whether it's writing, like you said, whether it's leadership, whether it's vision, like understanding how you want the world to be. That's one of the other wonderful things about our industry or this practice is that it accepts so many different skills and it respects so many different skills. Like Doug, for example, is a really good teacher. And, Doug would be like the most popular social studies teacher. He would be rarely popping in the vid and sitting in the back. He'd be the guy up there, like inspiring people to read books and stuff. And you translate that with a little bit of entrepreneurship sprinkled in and boom, like you got a business. It's awesome.
Ricardo says, I got started by developing a skill with 10 true clients, working on productizing that service to make it available to 100. Awesome.
Nice.
Steve A put it back in there. I Googled how to make money online, which led to Pat Flynn, Dane Maxwell, the Foundation, Dropship Lifestyle. So many business models. Now dropshipping e-bikes. Best month ever.
Oh, yeah.
That's an interesting thing about bikes right now is that I do believe that there's more of those things on the road because less people are driving. And, we've been riding our bikes around the road. It's extremely pleasurable to be riding a bike right now because there are less cars on the road.
Yeah, and I love this e-bike trend. It's so cool. Something we've been excited about for half a decade now, and hanging out in Europe every summer, seeing how much adoption there is in Europe, especially for like high-end e-bikes.
Yeah.
This idea that, especially in mountain biking, but I think now over the past year, a couple years, it's becoming feasible for you to have a battery pack in a high-end road bike.
Mm-hmm.
And this is so rad because the most epic rides I've ever been on were like in the Pyrenees mountains or in Spain or Europe, where you're climbing for 2 hours at a time. And the reality is that takes about, if you're a very fit young person, it can take like a quarter of a year of daily practice to be able to do that kind of ride. And if you want to go along with a buddy who had a job or whatever, put the battery pack on the thing and you can ride together on some of these amazing roads. I think that's so cool.
David says revenue on normal products is down 70 to 80%. Sorry. Now we sell everything sub. I think this is sub-assembly, every part. Now that opened up new product ideas, new businesses, sell everything. Yeah, there's something to selling everything. I think that you can get intelligence through markets like that.
Totally.
If you're just messing around selling a bunch of stuff on eBay or Amazon or wherever it is, you figure out information.
Totally.
And then that might lead to a profitable niche.
That's the thing. It's like compare all the time you spent reading, watching stuff like this versus the time, like this podcast is only valuable in so much as it gets you moving. You know what I mean? Like getting moving is where the information really comes from.
Rob says started by building products that I thought were cool. Then struggled to find 100 customers or fans. It didn't work. Then tried to just build an audience with a niche without a product, realizing it's a combo.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is a subtle combo because sometimes, I think like your product could be your idea on your podcast. So like whether that's, Doug's method of teaching affiliate marketing is essentially a product. Sometimes it's a lot easier to put ideas into a product, like at Dynamite Jobs, for example. Our product is kick-ass jobs. And I'll tell you this, the market has spoken. The jobs that you guys are creating that we're posting on our website are way more kick-ass than the podcast and the ideas that we have on the show,
Mm-hmm.
because that site is way more popular than Tropical MBA. So sometimes it's easier to create something that exists outside of yourself than to try to, be smart.
Casey Von Newman says, my mom did the books for local restaurants. Meanwhile, my dad was the balloon man, dressed up as a clown, delivered balloons to parties and sang to people. I was doomed to entrepreneurship.
She was doomed.
Here's
Totally.
the cool thing about that, though. This is an example of finding a client or a customer and then trying to continue to fill their needs. So you go in there, you do the books, and then you realize that they need entertainment. Then you realize maybe they need new menus. Then you realize maybe that person that's ordering the food is messing up and there's a lot of wasted food. And that's the case with a lot of these businesses. Like, you can get in there on one idea and then you can look around and say, like, wow, like, you guys actually have a bigger problem than this, and I'm going to learn how to solve this problem for you. And that becomes your skill set. That's Rip Pivot Jam right there.
Yeah. And it's also like real world information. Like the problem, like it's one thing if you read like Smart Passive Income, there's going to be like a lot of methods on there for how to make money online, but they're not quite properly the methods that Pat himself used, which is what you would learn if you met him, which was Pat was OG blogger who shared his exact income online. He was basically the first internet marketer in the world to do that. And so the lesson isn't go to Smart Passive Income, read his blog post, then implement it or whatever. The lesson is get in the game, figure out what people are doing, and then figure out a way you can pivot those sorts of strategies into your own niche. I think the face value stuff is valuable too, insofar as it gets you moving. So it's not shade. It's just saying that like most information isn't on the web, right? Most information isn't in books. Information is what everything that poses as information typically isn't the information. That's why we're complaining about things like mass media, because that's not actually the information. What that is it's like this, it's a construct, it's a product to get eyeballs. It's not actually the world.
Information is moving feet and dollars flowing. That's information.
That's information.
Danny Green says, which of these 5 methods would be the quickest to generate revenue?
Dealmaster. Easy call. Well, either Dealmaster or Takeover Technique. So the fastest way to generate revenue is to get yourself a job and get yourself a good job. And that is way, way, way easier than starting a business. And so cut that fundamental deal. Slightly harder would be to find one key client. Someone who, I'll give you an example. I have a highly skilled friend. I won't mention his skill set, but just put it this way. He can go out and get a job where he makes $100,000 plus, couple $100,000 a year. Now that's one way to do it. You go out and you say, I'm so skilled that I can make a couple $100,000 a year. I wouldn't do that. You know what I would do? I would make $40,000 a year with the couple $100,000 skill set.
Mm-hmm.
I would package my skill set in a very specific deliverable way. And I would go to one key client and I would say, you pay me $40,000 a year and I'm going to deliver this amazing skill set. Now, do you think I'm going to deliver it? Hell no. I'm going to have somebody that I can monitor deliver that, because I am so skilled that me even just monitoring something, in other words, I'm leveraged, I have margin there.
Yeah.
What am I going to do with my margin? I'm going to find a way to parlay the key client into 100 true fans. That to me is fundamentally entrepreneurship. That is understanding structures of delivering value. That is not being a skilled person who delivers value in a levered way. That is, that's like mega freelancing. That's, it's a troublesome model. It's a troublesome model. You can get stuck there.
Rob says, you guys helped me by covering this question on a previous podcast, Tao of the Hustle, the second one that we did.
Yeah.
I don't remember what number that was, but
it was a long time ago. The Tao of the Hustle was, a similar kind of sort of call to action of, look, like a lot of people out there that want to get into entrepreneurship and they want to read blogs and stuff and put up websites because they don't like their job. And one of the elements of the Tao of the Hustle is like, well, liking your job and getting paid for something is a lot easier than what you're trying to read about online. So there's just like these kind of gut check moments of, if you're not willing to do certain things, like good luck with that kind of thing.
Jeff says the best way to get into it is to find a problem to solve. Bonus points for i.e. money. Make it something that makes people money or that everyone hates.
Yeah. So solving a problem that's already being solved, extra bonus points. Like you don't
Yeah.
have to identify new problems in the world. Like you have to there's a lot of people that have, there's a lot of people that have a problem they need to fix a roof. It's like that's a problem that's already getting solved.
Our least successful products that we ever made were ones that I came up with out of thin air.
Yeah.
Like that I thought were good ideas. Like honestly, those were the biggest piles of dump that we made. And the most successful products were the ones that we pivoted jammed on. The ones that there were already established cash flows, revenue streams of cash flows for. People were already buying them.
And then you can reverse engineer them rather than having to build an ivory tower from scratch.
Yeah. Cool, guys. I think that about wraps it up.
That was Bala. Thanks for joining us. Join us tomorrow when we list 10 surprising best entrepreneurial movies of all time. Whatever. It's going to be
I got
good.
a shocker.
We're going to do a movie show tomorrow. It's going to be a Friday happy hour. Show up with your coffee, your cocktail. We ain't going to judge you if you're going to have a gin and tonic at 12 p.m. That's no big deal here at the Tropical MBA podcast. Have a great Thursday. Check out the pod on the iTunes or the Stitcher or the Spotify feed. We got a good one for you today. That's it.
See you guys.